We have a very mixed attitude in the world around us towards the value creators, the producers, the makers, the builders, the business people. On the one hand, we have a certain admiration for all of them, right? I mean, who doesn't want their kids to be successful, to go to Silicon Valley, to start a business? How many kids go to business school wanting to be successful and wanting to achieve and wanting to build a business of their own? So there's a certain ambition in the American character, in the American culture. Right? And there's a certain reverence for success and for achievement, even for wealth, built in a sense, into the American spirit. Very unique. If you've lived in other countries, you don't have this, certainly not to this extent. There's something American about this wanting to be successful, having ambition, wanting to be wealthy, wanting to create, wanting to build. And viewing that in some sense, and we'll get to the other sense in a minute, in some sense as a good thing, as a positive, right? We urge our children to go after such a career, to be successful. And we ourselves have it inside of us. But yet, it's a split culture. We have this, and Americans have this view, but at the same time, we also resent success and wealth. We portray it negatively. We come down hard on it. Right now, you're witnessing it in the inequality debate. You know, the takers, right? The wealthy are the takers, not the creators, they're the takers. And they need to share more of it with the rest of us. We hear that rhetoric from everybody. But it's not just in politics. Politics is usually the last place where you find these things, the last sequentially. You know, years ago I saw a statistic that over 50% of all the murders on television are committed by businessmen. Right? That does not reflect reality, just in case you're wondering. You know who commits most murders in reality? Professional criminals, you know, bad guys, really bad guys, who this is what they do, gang members. Businessmen don't commit anywhere near the level of murders that they do. But in television, there's a sense in which that's satisfying. If you watch, legal shows, I don't know, I watch The Good Wife. The bad guy's always the businessman. The bad guy's always a good show, but the bad guy's always the businessman. That's a premise. It's a premise on every one of these shows. Right? And even those businessmen, and this is to me the most tragic and sad thing of all, many of the businessmen who achieve the success, who live the American dream, the dream that every ambitious young American has, they then feel guilty about it. They're not happy. They don't have that sense of pride and self-esteem that you should have given the achievement of that dream. So many of them apologize for it. You know, they give back because they took so much, right? You hear that language. They feel like they have to get involved in charity and community service, not because they are doing it for some value that they really care for. I'm not against charity and community service if it's for that. No, they do it out of a sense of guilt, out of a sense of giving back. And often, and this is true of some of the greatest businessmen in American history, J.P. Morgan is one example that, you know, on their deathbed, they're begging for forgiveness. And what was their sin? Their sin was creating values, creating wealth, building a business, being a business. So we have this dichotomy in our culture, and it's interesting. When you're young, you feel it less. You're immersed in the ambition. You're kind of in. All you see is the possibility of success in the future. But the values that the culture holds, the values that our mothers teach us, that our preachers teach us, that our philosophy teachers teach us, they're there, and they chip away at you as you get older. And this is why that guilt is felt much more by older entrepreneurs than by younger ones. It's kind of interesting how it develops. And when you when you think of those images of a guilt-ridden J.P. Morgan, it's a real tragedy. Because I think, hopefully most of you think, that Businessmen indeed is a heroic achievement. Value creation is something noble and something to be celebrated and something to be proud of and something that should lead to happiness. And this is Rand's view. So why is her view so diametrically opposed to our culture's view? And I think the answer is not exclusively, but primarily to be found in Ayn Rand's unique view of ethics. When you grow up in with the traditional ethical views, that the purpose of ethics is to teach us how to sacrifice, how to live for others, how to place the well-being of other people ahead of you. And even if we dismiss that for a certain period in our life as we pursue our ambitions, that ethic chips away at us. It's inconsistent to be proud and to gain self-esteem from great achievements when what you really should have done, what achievement really means, is helping other people. It's sacrificing. You've done the opposite, and that's where the guilt comes from that conflict between the two. It's because Rand is a champion of a morality of self-interest, a morality of egoism, that she has the view that she has of business. The purpose of Rand's morality is individual human happiness. It's success, it's achievement. And Rand recognizes, it's somewhat, when you read her ethics, it becomes somewhat obvious that to be successful, one has to be a value creator at some level. One has to be productive. One has to be able to make, produce, create the stuff that makes one's own life possible. If you're not, how can you have any sense of self-esteem, a sense of achievement, self of your own? The fact that you as an individual are worthwhile. Where do you get that from if you can't do that? So for her, the idea of working, of being productive, of making stuff, is part of being human. It's part of what it means to be alive. Life is the pursuit of those values. And to pursue those values, you have to create something. You have to create something. So it's an integral part of her ethics that your responsibility to yourself as a human being, to your own happiness, to your own success, is to go out there and produce and create. And she has a profound understanding of what that takes and what an achievement it is to do it on the kind of scale that successful entrepreneurs and successful businessmen get to do it. Right? And you see that in the characters of Howard Rourke and Hank Rearden more than in any other characters. Dagny, of course, and Dagny Taggart in Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. Fountainhead, where the value creation is not a business, it's in architecture, it's in the arts, but it's in the building, in the creation, and the hard work, and the intensity of work, and the intensity of focus, and the commitment to values. The commitment to your own integrity, to commitment to your own values that requires. Right? Sometimes it requires going to work in the quarry so that you can build what you believe is good, what you believe is right. For those of you who've read The Fountainhead, and I know some of you haven't, so I'm going to try not to give away any spoilers. In Atlas Shrugged, it's in the character of Rearden. Right? And the thought, the energy, the focus that is required for him to achieve what he achieves. The risk-taking that he has to engage in. The long hours, the long nights. But the intensity, and what she does in Atlas Shrugged, which is unique, I think, in literature, is the focus she gives to the mental effort, the thinking that Reardon has to go through in order to achieve what he achieves. And these are dramatizations. But if you talk to the entrepreneurs here, right? If you talk to the entrepreneurs over this weekend, the people who've achieved, whether they've achieved at the level of Reardon or not, you'll see that for all of them, to the extent that they have achieved it, has required that kind of focus, that kind of mental effort, that kind of hard work, that kind of dedication and devotion, and that kind of integrity. That's what it takes. And it's what it takes whether you're an objectivist, committed to Ayn Rand's philosophy and committed to morality, or not. The advantage of being an objectivist is you recognize these values. You get to guide them. Many people, unfortunately, kind of fall on them, in a sense by accident. Not quite by accident, but in a sense, You've got the Steve Jobses, who's did this completely, right, in his professional life, the focus, the dedication, the integrity. Not so much in his personal life, and that's why he might have died when he died. Right? Maybe if he dedicated the same kind of resources in kind of trying to cure his cancer to building the iPhone, he'd still be with us. The same principles. In Ayn Rand, the same principles apply to everything in life. That dedication, that focus, that integrity, the use of the mind. Not just in business, not just in your career, but in everything in your life. It's an integrated whole. So Rand recognizes what it takes, kind of the intensity, the hard work, and the value of it all to you, to your own life. You don't get self-esteem without challenging yourself, without pushing yourself, without testing your own boundaries, without building and creating value for you. This is one of the reasons that just handing a check, whether it's to a welfare recipient or whether just to your kids, can be self-esteem destroying because they're not pushing themselves. They're not challenging. They're not getting the satisfaction of knowing that they can take care of themselves. Right? So self-esteem requires that. And this is why ambition is so important. This is why pushing yourself is so important. This is why trying to achieve is so important. Rand also has a unique perspective on the human mind, on reasoning, on our rational faculty. For Rand, all the values that we have are products of the human mind, are products of reason, are products of thinking. And so the thing you want to cultivate the most, the virtue you want to cultivate, if you're ambitious, if you want a good life, if you want happiness, is your rational faculty, is reason, it's your ability to think. And again, think of Ayn Rand's books and how she concretizes this and illustrates this again and again and again. In Dagny's committed to facts and only facts. And integrity to walk away from the hero of Atlas Shrugged. I'm trying not to give the story away. Because she doesn't agree with him on the facts. Now, she's wrong, as if you read the book, you know. But she's committed to the facts, not to him. She's committed to him, but less so than to the facts, right? So in every one of her characters, she embeds this idea of commitment to reason, which means commitment to facts, which means commitment to reality. And she shows how that commitment is essential in the activity of creation, artistic creation in the case of Rourke, or business creation as in the case of Reardon, Dagny, and the other heroes. It is this single-minded dedication to reason and rationality which is what makes values possible. So, the culture we live in is a culture of sacrifice. So at least, again, it's not a culture that lives this. It's a culture that promotes this. But it's a culture that believes that the noble is the sacrificial, the noble is the selfless. And therefore they can't, as much as some of them would like to try, they can't view business as noble. You know, it's like conservatives can't be really pro-business because it's inconsistent with their moral code. So they try, they say the words, but they can't actually do it. Rand is an egoist, which means she's advocating for a morality of self-interest, a morality of individual flourishing, individual happiness. And therefore, value creation, again, whatever, artistic, you've got seminars here on financial, on business, on legal, and wherever it happens to be, it's an essential for that flourishing, for that success, for the achievement of happiness. This is for Rand, the essence of what morality is. This is the core of what the objectivist ethics is about. You know, if you think about all the virtues, and think about successful businessmen, you will see that to this extent that they've been successful in their business, they match up with the virtues as Ayn Rand articulates them. So, you know, take some simple ones, and I'm not going to go over all of them. I mean, you're not going to be a successful businessman if you're not honest. And again, this has to do with the dedication of facts, dedication to reality, which is what honesty fundamentally is. A recognition that when you've made a mistake, it's a mistake. You've made a mistake. Your people have made a mistake. How many products did Steve Jobs scrap? Because they just weren't good enough, because they didn't match up, because they weren't right. Sunk cost, millions of dollars, lots of effort, and a lot of people advocating for them, and yet they're scrapped. Go back to zero. Because that's what it means to have a commitment to the facts. Or think about what it means. So that's honesty with your people, honesty with yourself. Right? But think about the flip side. Think about people who are dishonest and what kind of success they've had. Right? Now, if we measure success just in dollars, some of them are successful because some of them make money. Right? Not for very long, for a while. But are they really successful? And I use Bernie Madoff as an example because he's kind of the story's out there and it's easy to monitor. But there are lots of Bernie Madoffs, unfortunately, in the world around us. There are lots of people who've tried to fake the facts to other people and to themselves. I don't know, everybody, you guys are young, so I don't even know if you know who Bernie Madoff was, right? Everybody know who Bernie Madoff? Anybody not know? Anybody embarrassed to say they don't know? Bernie Madoff, did this pyramid scheme and he lied. He stole basically from his friends and family. The guy lived with lies, with faking reality for years. And by every single account, he was unbelievably miserable. He actually has said that he's happier in jail than he was before he was caught. Because it goes back to that self-esteem, right? If you know you're lying, if you know you're deceiving, if you know the money you're getting is not coming from actual creation, from actually making stuff, from actual production, you can't live with yourself. You can't look at other people in the eye. You can't have a relationship with somebody. Think of your own lives. Think of your personal lives. Think about lying to the person you care most about regularly, systematically, over long periods of time. You can't do it. Or if you can, you lose the relationship. The relationship is not sustainable. Okay. So, honesty is required. honesty with yourself, honesty with the people around you, is required to be successful. Again, think about the culture we live in. Often the culture we live in will tell you the opposite. Oh no, you can be successful as a dishonest businessman. There are lots of them. They're portrayed in the movies all the time. By the way, the villains in the movies are always more interesting, more successful, more charming. They get the girl. They live a better life. They have confidence. They have self-esteem, right? All the villains in the movies have, these good-looking, exciting people. And the good guys, what are they? Other than James Bond, right? Dull. But even James Bond, the villain is obviously just as debonair as James Bond is. In reality, it doesn't work that way. Just think about bad people in reality and how they look and how they behave and what kind of life they have. So, Rand is asking us to commit ourselves in the name of morality, in the name of what's right, to the best within us. Asking us to commit ourselves to our minds, to our hard work, to pursuing values, and to creating those values, to embracing life, to living in its full potential as human beings. We're quite a phenomenal species, quite a phenomenal animal. There's a lot to embrace if you fully embrace who you are and what you are. So Rand's there to tell you, embrace life, live it, be ambitious, be courageous, take risks, smart risks. Think, create. And at the end of the day, what ultimately motivates the great producers, but producers generally, what motivates us? What motivates people to do all this, to work hard, to struggle? Again, if you read The Fountainhead, if you read Atlas, a lot of this is struggle. It's not easy. But to achieve and to be successful. What motivates the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs and the, what's his name at Amazon? Slips my mind. Bezos. But, those are the names we know today, but the steel makers and the successful railroad guys and the Michael Milkins, the great bankers of the period. What motivates the great producers? What motivates the great businessmen, the great entrepreneurs? What motivates the great artists? What drives them? And I believe it's love. Now, there's a word you don't often hear in this context. It's love. They love what they do. They love the life that they're leading. They love the productive process, the challenge. They love values. And if they're going to be whole, if they're going to be successful in life, not just in business, then they have to love their own life. They have to embrace their own life and love their own life. Loving is to value. To love is to value. And to value one's own life is to love one's own life. And to that extent, Rand's morality, because it's a morality about your life, because it's a morality about your values, is a morality about love. Thank you all. All right, we got time for questions. Not a lot of time, a little bit of time. Nothing? There are microphones in the back, so they're microphone. There's a mic. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be with you for the conference. So if you've got any questions you want to ask me, now's the time. I get on a flight in like an hour. No, I'm serious. I have to be at the airport at 7:30, to London, where I change planes, and I go to Belgrade, And there's somebody here from Belgrade. Where's the guy from Belgrade? He organized a conference for me in Belgrade, and he came here, and I'm giving a talk over there at his conference. So, and that's the beginning of a 8-country, 13-day, 15-talk trip, all motivated by love. Yeah.
So, can you hear me? So honesty is good, but is brutal honesty good?
Well, give me an example of what you think of brutal honesty, right? Versus, I can come up with my own if you want. Right?
Well, you mentioned Jeff Bezos. There's always been issues going on, discussions and exposés of what it's like to work in an Amazon processing facility. If Jeff Bezos were to be brutally honest, he could have Amazon show the public just how menacing those processing facilities really are. Like not so much showing what it's like inside there, but going to the level of where the exposés go.
Yeah, so there's two levels to this. One is you don't owe exposure of all the facts to everybody. It depends on the relationship, right? What you reveal and what you don't reveal. Honesty doesn't mean you have to give everybody a list. Like I ask you, how you doing today? And you give me a list of the 5 diseases you think you might have. And it's not what it means, right? It's contextual. Now, my guess is that the Amazon processing facilities, they're not bad at all, and Bezos would probably be happy to open them up to the press if he believed the press was honest about reporting what was in them. I know people who work at Amazon, not in the warehouse, in the processing thing, who love working at Amazon, who think it's one of the great places on the planet to work. But so there's that level of you don't owe everybody all the facts, right? There's a context for those facts. See, anybody, again, it's a young crowd. So if I give this talk about honesty to an older crowd, they always ask the same question about whether it's okay to lie in this situation. Anybody want to guess the situation? It's always guys, because this is a male question. Anybody know what the question is? Yeah. Yeah, about what? Because it's a particular X. Exactly. Do I look fat in this dress? I've never given a talk to a group of business people, males, who have not asked that question. So what's the right answer? Yes. I mean, the right answer depends on the relationship with your wife, right? This is a game. She's not asking you for the actual truth. Now, some wives are, and in that case, you should tell her exactly what the truth is, but not all are. It's a game in a relationship that you play, and based on the rules of the game, you answer the question. So again, honesty is not about what you say and answer to particular. There's a context that surrounds it, right? In terms of it's not faking reality to gain anything. So if my wife asks me that and she's serious because there's some important decision she has to make about it, of course I'm going to tell her the truth. If it's just the usual little ribbing that's going on about how do I look and stuff, then you play the game, right? So it's the context of what exactly is going on that determines that. But often you have to be brutally honest. Often you have to tell somebody that they're wrong, that they're not good at whatever they think they are good, that you often have to tell your kids, here, Dad, look at my masterpiece. It sucks. Now, there's a way to do it. And if you ask my son, I probably failed at that way to do it. But the truth is the truth. And if it's important to them in terms of, then they're going to benefit from it. They're going to benefit from the criticism. They're going to benefit from the, from the truth, right? Facts are for us, right? They're not against us. Reality is for us. Right? It's not that the truth is your enemy. The truth is your friend. Because, look, if you've made a mistake, so think about it from the other side's perspective. I mean, there are only 2 possibilities. I think there are only 2 possibilities, right? You're either right or you're wrong. If you're right and somebody criticizes you, what do you care? right? You're right. And if you're wrong and somebody points it out, you should thank them. Because now you're better off because you know something you didn't know before and you were wrong before. So there's no downside to it, or there shouldn't be. Unfortunately, most people don't respond that way, but that's how it should be.
So before my question, I do work at Amazon, and I have been through the FCs, the fulfillment centers. The people, it's dramatically changed in terms of conditions from now and 15 years ago. But 15 years ago, Amazon had very little money.
Yep.
Now people are generally happy, and there wouldn't be 120,000 Amazon employees if we weren't.
If people were crying at their desks, truly crying at their desks on a regular basis, people would find other jobs.
Yeah, that's true. You've got Microsoft, eBay, all of these other companies in the same location.
And they're all trying to poach each other's people.
They really
Otherwise, the Justice Department will come after them and sue them because it'll claim that they're colluding, which happened to Apple recently. It lost a lawsuit because it wouldn't poach Google employees, so they claimed there was collusion. It's antitrust violation. But
And sorry, one more comment before my actual question. My husband, this was the secondary dress. My husband told me the first dress I was wearing looked like a flock of seagulls flew at me and pooped on me.
it's too bad you didn't wear that.
Yeah, I know. It was
Now you got my
actually a
imagination going.
We have an awesome, brutal honesty thing.
Good.
Where I tell him he's being rude. So with shifting priorities of what you want in your life, how often do you reevaluate what you're doing so that you're moving towards doing what you most love or fulfilling what you most love?
So to me or?
You.
Yeah. I don't do it on a regular basis, but there's certainly points in life where I've certainly done it. Whether it's just downtime and you have time to think. Which reminds me, Bill Gates used to take, when he was at Microsoft, used to take a week every year, I think it was a week, and go somewhere completely isolated. No phones, nothing, right? And just a pile of books and away, and all he'd do is think. Read and think, and that's all he did. And reevaluate everything Microsoft was doing. Those are the days when he was running Microsoft. So it's easier to do those kind of thinking when you're down, because when you're engaged in the productive activity that you're engaged in, it's hard to evaluate yourself during that period. So I'd like to say I try to do it once a year, but I probably don't. It's probably less frequent than that.
Then how do you measure yourself? How do you measure that you're moving towards what you're doing?
In life. I think it's in those points that you measure it, but you can't do it too frequently, because if you do it too frequently, life is lived long term and the planning's long term, and it's very hard to do it weekly or monthly. You need to have a gap. You need a certain time to see how things are going. And that might make sense to do it annually. It might make sense to do it every 6 months. It depends on your career. It depends on your job. It depends if so I, at some point, decided I love what I do. And and there's no better job that I could do than this job. So I don't have to rethink that every time. Unless I have a crisis, which happens once in a while, right? And then you reevaluate during that crisis, or you put some time aside and you do it. But if you're not sure about the career path you're on, then you would reevaluate more frequently, right? So it really depends. So when I was a professor, I would do this a lot, right? Because I would sit and say, do I really want to teach the same class for the next 20 years? The same students, the same content over and over. It's fun. I enjoyed it. I loved what I did. But do I really, in 20 years, do I see myself doing exactly the same thing? And the answer was no. And then so what am I doing, right? Where am I going? So it depends where you are and how committed you are to the particular profession you have at that point in time. Does that make sense? So I don't think there's a rule here that you have to do it every 6 months or every year. I think it depends on what stage you are in life. Yeah, the younger you are, you might want to do it more frequently because you're not sure. You don't know yet. And I'm also for experimentation, by the way, generally in life, but certainly when it comes, but also when it comes to career, unless you really know what you want. Now, some people know what they want from very young or in college or something. But, I think it helps. It helps with the risk-taking. It helps with life. If you're not sure what you want, to be willing to switch and to try different things and to go different places and test different things. Life is long, in the good sense, not in the bad sense. Life is long. There's lots of time to live. And there's lots of time to try different things and to take different risks. So if you're doing your evaluations and you're not happy with where you happen to be, quit. Go somewhere. I mean, if the opportunities are there, go try something else. Test it out. And, do what you love. I mean, I think that's the part of what I was trying to say. Do what you really love. Find something you really are passionate about, that you really engage in. Because if you're going to be really good at it, it's going to be hard. And it's going to require a lot of you. It's going to require dedication. It's going to require real effort and real commitment. If you're going to commit like that, love it. Love what you're doing. And there's a wonderful Steve Jobs commencement address that he gave at Stanford. I can't remember what year, but you can find it on YouTube, where he talks about this. He talks about, go find really find what you love to do and try it out. Yeah, I mean, you might fail at it. You might decide it's no good for you. But at least give it a shot.
I wanted to return to the idea you raised about the trope of the evil businessman. I see that in movies it's played out exactly the same each time. For the first half of the movie, we see the businessman being ruthless. He doesn't do anything that an objectivist would consider immoral. But by the time we get halfway through the movie, the audience is meant to hate the businessman. And then at some point, about halfway through the movie, we always see him do something that's definitely immoral. Like he lies, he cheats, he steals. But to most of the audience who's watching it at that point, they already hate the businessman. So a classical example of that would be It's a Wonderful Life. You're meant to hate Mr. Potter for the first half of the movie, even before he steals the money from Uncle Bailey. So why do you think they feel a need to put that scene in almost every movie where he actually does the evil?
It's really essential to what they're trying to do and to the whole morality of altruism. But, I have to say something about It's a Wonderful Life first. It really is an evil movie. Really isn't. I mean, it's a very well-made movie. It's a brilliant movie. I'm not making aesthetic judgment here, other than I'm saying aesthetically it's probably a very good movie. But it is an evil theme. Think about the good guy. The good guy is the failed businessman who can't keep track of his money, so that $5,000, I think it is, goes missing. Right?
$8,000.
What's that?
$8,000.
$8,000 because his uncle took it or something. He won't foreclose on anybody. He needs an angel from another dimension to come and kind of talk him out of committing suicide. He gave up everything he valued, right? Remember, if you've ever seen the movie, and you should all see the movie because it's a powerful movie. He gave up going to Paris because of his family, because he had to sacrifice for the family and take over the family business, I think. I haven't seen it in years, so some of this is from vague memory. But he gave up on the girl, right? He gave up on going, and he settled. His whole thing is settling. And the movie's theme is sacrifice since settling are good, right? And being a mediocre, bad businessman is good, because the good businessman, the guy who actually forecloses on loans, I think that's what you're in business to do if you're a banker, he's the evil guy. Now, why do they have to make him actually do something bad? Well, to them, it's the same thing, right? To them, it's a logical consequence of being self-interested. They cannot conceive of self-interest, and they don't want you to be able to conceive of self-interest without the lying, cheating, backstabbing SOB. That's what they want self-interest to mean, right? So the ruthless stuff, but it's ethical, and so it's just single-minded pursuit of money or whatever. It's too clean, right? They need to make it dirty because they want to make self-interest dirty. They want to make business dirty. And to an American audience who generally has a positive view of business, that particularly in the 1930s when Capra, this is what makes Capra Ayn Rand hated him, and this is what made him such a villain. in the 1930s, where people generally had a positive view of business still, right? He has to really, stick the knife in and twist. He really has to make the point, look, business equals self-interest. Self-interest by necessity equals lying, cheating, stealing, and being an SOB, right? That's by necessity. And therefore, by the way, business is bad, right? And if you watch other Kappa movies, you see this theme. He repeats this theme, and business always comes out as the enemy, as the bad guy. And they're always well-made, and always beautifully made, and always well-acted, and always amazing movies. And that's what makes them even more powerful as propaganda. They're not propaganda, they're art. As art that's conveying a message. And that message is they want to link self-interest with lying, stealing, or cheating. That's the final kind of knife in the back.
I have two questions concerning.
Just one other thing. Think about it also in the sense of, think about it in the context of the 30s, right? When American business is unregulated. Right? It's still relatively free. And this is a way politically to convince the powers to be to start regulating business. And why do we regulate business? We regulate business because we're convinced that this single-minded pursuit of money will lead to lying, stealing, and cheating. That's the excuse always used. If you don't have food inspectors, this is why they write about the meatpacking industry. If you don't have food inspectors, they'll poison you, right? If you don't have elevator inspectors, the elevators will fall down and kill you. If you don't, time and time again, these are bad guys. That's what self-interest leads to, and that's what the essence of business is. And what's amazing to me is that Americans still have such a relatively positive view of business, given the extent of the campaign against it. Yeah.
I have two questions about human reason and loving what you do. And my first question is that, what do you think human reason is? And my second question is that if what I'm good at and what I love differs significantly, do you think should I do what I love or what I'm good at?
Okay, I'm going to somewhat fudge on the first question. Reason is the faculty that allows you to observe the world, to understand it, to integrate that knowledge. Think in terms of to integrate, to understand, and to come up to new conclusions. Reason is that faculty that allows you to do all that. Right? So to take sense data and to use it to form concepts and to make integrations. So there's this big debate out there. The whole book's written about this. Should you do what you love or should you do what you're good at? Right? Well, ideally, you do both. So I think it's important to understand why it is that you love what you love. So when I say to love something, I don't really, because to love is to value. And you should understand why you value what you value. And if you're really bad at something, do you really love it? It's worthwhile really digging in and figuring out why it is that you have this response to something that you're not very good at. And I suspect that when most people do that, they'll discover that, you might love it, but you might not love doing it. I love music, but I'm tone deaf. And I certainly couldn't write, and I can't sing, but I love music, right? But you're talking about an activity. It's something, but I can't imagine myself loving something, really profoundly loving something that I'm bad at, that I'm really not good at. There's some conflict there that's driving the emotion versus what you're good at. And it may be, maybe you love it or you think you love it because this is what your parents told you need to love from when you're very young. So I was told from when I was this big that it was all about I had to either be a doctor or an engineer or a scientist. That was it. Those were the options, right? I'm neither one of those today, right? But that I was kind of conditioned to that, and I liked all those things, right? I didn't love them, but I liked them all. And I went and I was an engineer, and I liked being an engineer. I didn't love it, but I liked it. But I kind of was pushed there more because my options growing up were those, right? And I knew I didn't want to be a doctor, so I had to be an engineer. There was no other choices, right? The idea of, for example, when I was growing up, of going to study philosophy, not that I ever would have, but going to study philosophy, that was unthinkable. I mean, it just wasn't in the universe of what you could conceive of, right? So partially is make sure that what you love. I love to paint, but I'm really lousy at it, right? Really? I mean, so okay, you could do it as a hobby, but do you really want to spend 8 hours a day doing something you're not good at? Do you really love that kind of life? You wouldn't enjoy it. You wouldn't get any satisfaction out of it. It's also an issue of, can you get better at something? Are you going to improve? Are you going to create? So I'm assuming when you say you're bad at it, you can't get good, right? You're just, I love basketball, but I'm not going to be an NBA player. And I wouldn't enjoy being an NBA player because they would crush me every time, right? But think about that. That means something. So let's say you love, you see, it's hard for me even to think about it, right? I love math, but I'm really bad at it. I can't hold that. Now, if I thought I could really improve in it, then yes, right? But if really, there's something, mentally, so I think you have to search for that which you love and you're good at, or that you love and you can improve at and you can get good at. But there has to be the prospect of being good at whatever level, whatever level of ability you have. All right? I mean, I'm a good public speaker. I'm not, I don't know. I can't think of somebody who's a superstar. But you have to get to a point where you're really satisfied with what you're doing and your ability.
All right. Thank you, sir.
But I don't buy, let me point this out. I don't buy this stuff of go do what you're good at, forget about your passions. That I think is bad. Because if you don't love what you're good at, you're not going to experience the full satisfaction of achieving in that field. So I would say fight to find what you're good at or what you can become good at and what you love. To merge the two.
I want to go back to your discussion of the concept of value creators as being heroic. I recently started my own business several months ago, and there certainly are times where it feels like a heroic struggle. What 3 pieces of advice would you give to entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs to help see them through the darker and rougher times of that process, which there are plenty?
Yes, I know. 3 pieces of advice. Well, remember what your goal is. Remember what your purpose is. Why are you doing this? It's difficult. It's tough. But why are you doing this, right? And here, think about, this is where literature can be very useful, right? Art can be very useful. Think of Reardon in the darkest moments. He just ran the experiment and it's not Reardon metal, right? It still isn't there, right? And what does it take him, 8 years? I can't remember. 8 years of research and trial and error and more calculation and more sleepless nights. And that's a long time. And running a business on the side, right? So use Reardon or Howard Roark or Dagny Taggart as your model, right? Think about what they went through. But they knew what they wanted. They had a goal. They were going to get there. They were going to strive towards it. So art is very useful in that sense of giving you role models, of giving you something to think on. Not in a superficial way, but in a deep sense of what they were striving and what you're striving towards. So know what your goal is and remember it and keep it in context. Look for role models. And remember why you love what you do, right? Remember the good times. So don't obsess about the bad stuff. And try to sneak in some good stuff, career-wise. And I know there are periods where that's hard and you're just working nonstop and it doesn't seem like it's going and it doesn't seem like it's succeeding. But I believe that if you're committed to something and if you're good at it, the likelihood is you're going to be successful. There's no guarantees. There are no guarantees. Somebody else might beat you out of it and you might fail. Failure is possible. Even to a rational, successful person, failure is possible, and you have to recognize that possibility. But failure is not destructive if you know you did your best, if you know you went through it. And you have to remember that too. That is, that failure is just, it's just one step in a process. Again, think of a real-life example of Steve Jobs, right? Imagine what he went through when he was fired at Apple. Or when Next, I don't know if you even know what Next is, but Next Computers was nothing. I mean, he had great technology, but business-wise, it was a failure. Right? I actually used the Next Computer once, so it was cool. They were black, and they were very sexy, but nothing happened, right? So I don't know if that was 3. I don't know what that was, but
It's good.
okay.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I just have a question going back to honesty.
Yeah.
So I am personally on track for a military career as an officer, right? And as I'm sure you know, in the military culture, they completely promote selflessness and self-sacrifice and all of that. And in order to be in the military, particularly as an officer, you definitely have to play along by that. I've been through a lot of application processes, and there's no avoiding it in the essays you write. But the job that the military does and that I would do and that I would love to do, I still see as moral. So is it moral for me to at least pay lip service to this while I'm in the service to do something that is of higher value to me that is good?
Yes and no. I don't know. I'm torn, right? Because I'm torn because I have a huge amount of respect for soldiers, and I have a huge amount of respect for the military, and a huge amount of respect for the job the military does and the importance of that job. But they treat you like shit. I mean, that's an understatement. And I get emotional when I talk about this, so I apologize. I've said before that I think George Bush should be tried for treason for the way he treated and the way that our executive branch treats our soldiers. I couldn't be a soldier today because I couldn't tolerate it. And I don't know how you do. And I'm not, and I think you have to really think about it. They're going to put you on the battlefield, and they're going to tie your hands, and they're going to put a blindfold on you and expect you to win. And if you die, nobody's going to care. There's nothing more, that's so immoral. That is so unjust. That is treason. How you can go into a profession knowing that, I don't know. And I'm not trying to dissuade you. This is why I'm torn, right? But I really am in a sense, right? Because I couldn't do it. And I couldn't send my kids, not that they would ask, but I couldn't recommend that my kids do it because and I wish that wasn't the case because I really value it as a career. I was in the military. I know what, I didn't like it particularly, but I can see the value one can get from it. But when they treat you the way they treat you, and then in the name of altruism, they overload it all with the philosophical, negative philosophical, and yet you're defending me. So, somebody has to do it, and so I hate to dissuade you from doing it. But I really think you need to think that through. Now, is it okay at a certain level to give lip service to it? Yes, as long as you really know what you're doing. And as long as if you ever get into a position where you don't have to give lip service to, you can. But think about it this way. Here's the other challenge. You're going to become an officer, a second lieutenant, right, when you graduate. What are you going to tell your troops? Are you going to tell them that they are sacrificing for the greater good? Are you going to tell them all the stuff that the military... So now you're going from more than just fooling the guy at the top in order to get a position. Now you're going to educating a whole group of other people in this false morality because the Army demands that you do that. Because you tell them they're really individuals and they should fight for the value of freedom and it's in their self-interest. Will you be fired if you do that, right? I don't know. I'm just saying a lot to think about and a lot to consider when you go into a career like that. And it's not obvious. And I wish it wasn't this case because, again, I have a lot of sympathy and I have a lot of admiration for the military. But that aspect of it is just,
Yeah, that's the aspect that I've struggled with for
But think
all the
about-
time I've been as objectivist. So
think about the other side of it, the side of as an educator, as a commanding officer, which makes it even worse than it's just you. Somebody said turn off cell phones. I didn't hear. It's the car outside calling to tell me that I have to stop because my ride to the airport is here. So thank you all.